In previous real side experiences, I have revealed the presence of the real side universal universities, where the real guides and other entrusted aware beings provide continued support in the form of real education. School-like campuses where all those on their respective processes of ears recognition not only receive the assistance that such created ideas provide, but also is afforded accommodation if desired. And indeed, from the universities and the other guide-orchestrated real-side college-like setups are many beneficial and life-supporting assignments launched from, as the new friends and all those stepping up traverse multi-dimensional creation, sharing the new you, the opportunity of the ears, and garnering agreement for the various galactic projects, etc. I have also shared that the Mexican New Friend Ranch also has its real side version, and just as with the universities, it is in a constant state of expansion, far larger than its physical level counterpart, and serves a similar purpose, a place of real education, sharing and afforded sanctuary, a safe real side position under the protection of the real guides, where only those sincere and with intent placed with the ears are permitted to be. The universities and the ranch are in a constant state of expansion, as though by virtue of the sheer volume of stepping up beings and body types. And reflected then is not only the emergence of such real side creations, but that they need have the capacity to be able to accommodate the ever-growing body of new students that attend and take up residence. And just like the universities, it seems now the Mexican real side ranch serves as a launching point for galactic assignments and agreement gleaning objectives also, as would be the case in this real side experience. For I would be present on the ranch in my tent, just as it would be on the physical when retiring for the night. I would hear the voices of Jeremy and Kelsey outside, and as I parted the tent entry flaps, they would speak of how an assignment was made available for participation, and as we all agreed, so we would embark upon it. Although any real side point-to-point motion or travel mechanism isn't necessary through a real awareness that can simply insert its simulated vehicles anywhere throughout multi-dimensional creation, oftentimes we may either make use of other dimensional modes of transport, as decided through a consciousness, the portals, spacecraft, etc., or we may utilize our own unique means of reaching our destinations. Either method allows more so that the memory of the experience is retained on waking, as opposed to just manifesting where we wish to go. In this case then, my tent would serve as our transportation. Kelsey and Jeremy would enter it, and we would as though teleport from the ranch, traversing through the galaxies and dimensions for a destination where the execution of our assignment could be so. We would now be traversing through what seemed to be a timeline of eras pertaining to a particular species. As we proceeded, so we would pass through in rapid succession what were the very early time periods of the species, far more primitive, etc., and progressively onwards, the species' evolving way of living, their cities, architecture becoming gradually more advanced as a time so-called ran on, impressions would reveal that this species, a body form that were very close in approximation to the human, with slight variations, were also in a similar situation as the human race. For just as the dark force controlling reptilians had initially invaded the Earth, had engineered the humans as their slave species, an agreement secured and maintained to the reptilians, where the humans have remained the effects of this agreement, and the overall human experience has been one of control ever since. So it was with this species, that just as it was with the humans, so a version of the reptilians had applied their genetic know-how to create the first of this humanoid species, and they had been enslaved ever since. And as we passed through the various eras of their ever-advancing civilization, really then it all would be taking place within the reptilian prison yard. And further impressions revealed that every era that spun off from the previous one was by the hand of the reptilian overlords, that absent of their interference, the humanoid species may very well have developed along very different lines, according to what they decided through their consciousness, for indeed their form only came into existence through the genetic tinkering of the reptilians. That really then, despite how more civilized, so-called, but in reality more environmentally destructive and advanced their culture became, in reality it was progressively becoming a more controlled environment, where individuality of experiential expression was giving way to a more collective agreement, where effected then is more so experience that becomes increasingly the same, through the dictates of the controlling reptilians. For as the reptilians seek to micro-manage the consciousness of their slave species, to effect precisely simulation according to their controlling wants, so it is necessary to gradually have every individual of the slave species agreeing with the same controlling ideas. That although these ideas will effect as advancement in architecture in a supposedly improved quality of life, ultimately it is agreement to the unseen ideas which are also present with the surface simulated front, the intentionality of the reptilian consciousness that will be packaged with the surface and seemingly beneficial ideas that effects continuously escalating a restriction. The various time eras of the humanoid species civilizations had similarities to those humanity has been taken through also. There would be at one stage Egyptian-style architecture and monuments as an example. As we proceeded, flying through the eras of the humanoids in our tent transport, our body forms would be of a vast size in comparison to the environments, the structures, and cities. The actual humanoids were an approximate overall size comparable to the average human, and indeed we would on occasion scoop up a certain feature and examine it in our giant hands, if a certain architecture of buildings or statues piqued our interest or curiosity. At one point I would lift up, examine, and place back what would have been a very large statue, for the average humanoid species body size at any rate, not dissimilar to the design of the Sphinx, only in the form of a wolf, as opposed to a lion as the earth-based Sphinx originally was carved as. The suppressing and controlling reptilian species would be revealed as the Drakni, though we would in actuality never encounter one of their kind, and so any body features that distinguish them from other reptilians would never be determined. And just like the reptilians who were responsible for the inception of the human species and the control they maintained to this current moment of humanity taken through the various progressions of civilization which equated to in actuality greater control and restriction, which is set to become even more so, as the dark force reptilians desire to robotize humanity and control them utterly through technology, so the same model was being executed here with this humanoid species. Only that the agenda for control over the humanoids had advanced far greater than it is currently with Earth humans, to the extent that we would proceed now through eras of the humanoids that were on a parallel, equatable technological standing as current Earth humans, and beyond, into a more dystopian, though far more technologically based era, and where the Drakni were on the verge of initiating the final phase of their controlling agenda, the robotization of the humanoids, and the usurping of their experience-generating, idea-creating body-vehicle mechanics, that overall experience for them be completely dictated by the Drakni via the same or similar technology that all robotized humans would be connected to and controlled by. For the tense journey would terminate in this current and very advanced technological humanoids world, on the verge of robotization. We would stop, in fact, before a very large forbidding fence, as though representing our journey's end, and as we passed a reflective mirror-like wall, revealed would be our body forms now mechanized, as though a visual verification of the impressions we had in regards to the fate the humanoids were on the verge of experiencing. We would clamber over the fence, despite its daunting and seemingly insurmountable dimensions. Throughout our traversing through the time eras of the humanoids, we never had actually seen them, just the impressions as to their appearances. But now, in what was the current agreed-to overall humanoid experience, the restricting tech era, so the humanoids would be present, but our progress would go unnoticed, as we had rendered ourselves invisible to them. For indeed, we were not here to engage with the humanoids, that ultimately our assignment wouldn't involve enforcing change to the circumstances. In reality, this is impossible. All we can do is have others consider and forge alternative agreements, for every being is the decider of what they experience. We really are then just presenters of better options, choices that make more sense, life and awareness-wise. The humanoids were locked into agreement with the consciousness as controlled and managed by the Drakni, and so, where we might swing agreement in a more life-beneficial direction, would either be with the Drakni themselves, or through the very technology being utilized to bring their insidious agenda into fruition. Impressions suggested the Drakni were beyond reason a very malicious, ill-intended reptilian expression, and should we encounter them, they undoubtedly would attack us and attempt our elimination, and so we would avoid confrontation unless they instigated it. Instead, our attention and focus would be with the technology. For now, we would proceed through the techno-humanoid current era and reach a cave system where interfacing with the technology be possible. The group, Jeremy, Kelsey, and myself, would lay out sleeping bags in the mouth entrance of the cave system. Here we would remain as though waiting for the means by which engaging with the technology be so. It seems our patience paid off, and emerging from one of the rock walls would be a sophisticated computer where interface with the technology could be possible. Joining us now would be an individual that impressions revealed was a real guide overseeing our progress, but in the outer exterior form of my brother Gary, as the guides often will assume the forms of older siblings, parental figures, etc. What happened next was similar to real side experiences I have had with the Earth-based technology and have shared before, where provided are as though avatars within a simulated like environment. Avatars we can assume the forms of, operating through with our awareness, just as any vehicle we might animate, and where, as we enter the simulated environments of the technology, it is through these provided avatars within them that we can interface with the technology as an option. And so, Jeremy, Kelsey, and I would attach probes emanating from the computer to our current body forms, and our awareness be transferred into the avatars as afforded and operating within the simulated environment. The experience would end there. I wouldn't be shown the results of our efforts, if we were indeed successful or not, but interesting was it that not only does the slave and controller karmic agreement dynamic play out throughout the simulator, but many of which proceed along very similar lines as that which is befalling humanity, as though a standard model utilized by the Dark Force reptilians overall, including the Drakni, with the inclusion of the technology that the various slave species can be robotized and controlled completely through it. For indeed, such coordination can only be so if the agendas being carried out by the various arms of the reptilian races and expressions across multi-dimensional creation are working from the same script, that their orders are dictated to by the Kalorm God himself. For he would indeed sit on the top of the pyramid, and all hierarchical tiers of the Dark Force reptilians beneath would adhere to his dictates, that which then ultimately would serve to maintain his position of power, through all the trolled agreements therefore, and the measures required to maintain them, including robotization of a species and control through a technology where necessary.
That was terrific, Kevin. And yes, now you have a new residence, a flying tent in Mexico, which is cool. It's a lot more fun, huh? And so, wow, new adventures and new situations. And yes, as you're going out there and doing this, like anything we do, just like we share on Facebook or whatever, it's not so much about the outcome, because again, we are allowing others the free will. All we can do is present it, so we don't have to carry any of that. We just keep on doing what we're doing, just like the birds. They just fly around. They don't really consider, oh, I've been here, I did that, who saw me, you know. And we do acknowledge that, but realistically, the real freeness all life is just to present and allow it, just like the sun's shining. So